Welcome to the Assignment of Contract module. We will discuss the ins and outs of doing assignments of contracts in this guide. If you have some time, a minimal amount of money, and so-so or even bad credit, this could be a great fast cash investment strategy and a great way to build capital and learn real estate investing. It requires that you network with buyers and sellers and maintain the marketing lists discussed in the marketing course, which you should view if you have not already. A lot of people start their real estate investing career doing assignments or bird dogging. This is often categorized as wholesaling property because you will need to put the property under contract for a low enough price that you can get an assignment fee and your end buyer can fix up and secure a decent profit for themselves too. What you should know. Before beginning this guide, you should understand basic principles and terminology used in real estate investing. Which properties to look for and why. Where you want to buy real estate. How to locate motivated sellers. How to do income property analysis. Basics of investment strategies. What you will learn. This guide covers the following learning objectives. Understand what an assignment of contract is. Know the advantages and challenges of assignment of contracts. Know when to apply strategy. Understand seller, buyer, and property profiles for assigning contracts. Know the mechanics of assigning a contract. Know how to deal with assignability. Understand the legal issues involved with assigning contracts. List your options to overcome non-assignability. Tips for success. The important question isn't whether doing an assignment of contract is better or worse than holding or cash flowing a property, but which strategy is right for you. To discover the answer for yourself, ask these questions. Do I need additional income now or in the future? Am I in a high income tax bracket that would be adversely affected by more income now? Does my local real estate market present opportunities to acquire bargains while still commanding high enough rents to cover my expenses if I have to hold on to the properties? Do I have other income or savings that I can tap into if my rental properties become vacant or need major repairs? Is the current local real estate market rising or falling? Most investors start out assigning contracts or bird dogging, move into other wholesale investing techniques, and then gradually work into managing rental houses or becoming involved in larger, more complex real estate projects. Some people don't have the temperament to deal with tenants and the headaches that come with rental properties, so they supplement their income by assigning contracts. Some of you may wonder why you should make $5,000 on a contract assignment when you could make $20,000 on a rehab? The rationale behind choosing the $5,000 is that sometimes you might not have enough cash to rehab a property. If you have $100 for a deposit and plenty of free time, it makes sense to work harder and turn the $100 into $5,000. What is an assignment of contract? An assignment of rights under a contract is a transfer of a right or obligation of one person to another. In other words, you find the deal and put it under contract to purchase it from your seller. In the purchase contract, you negotiate the right to assign your contract. Then, once you find your investor buyer, you fill out an assignment of contract, make sure the assignment contract is given to the closing agent, and collect your money when the seller and buyer close the deal. Depending on what you and the investor buyer agree to and your level of mutual trust, they may pay you for the assignment prior to closing. You are essentially assigning your interest in that property. At that time, the contract is your interest to another investor or company for a price that includes your profit. For example, if Party A contracts with Party B to sell his property for $75,000, Party A later assigns the benefits of the contract the right to be paid $75,000 for the property to Party C, investor buyer, for a fee of $2,500. In this scenario, Party A is the obligor assignor, Party B is an obligor, and Party C is the assignee. Please note that Party C is not A, because the contract itself was not made for the purpose of benefiting Party C. Party A's assignment contract only transfers the rights or benefits to buy that right as stated in the original contract. The obligation to sell remains with the original owner, Party B, and the obligation to buy is assigned to investor buyer, Party C. Legality in your state. Check to see if assigning contracts is legal where you live if you are planning to use this method. There are some areas where this technique needs to use certain types of contracts with specific verbiage. Check with a knowledgeable real estate attorney who has been recommended by a local real estate investor to find out how to design legal contracts in your area. Not all real estate attorneys are well versed in this investment technique and its legality, so always get a referral. Assignment fee. Often, but not always, you are paid an assignment fee at the closing, sometimes classified as a fee to clear title. Another way you can get paid is to have an agreement with the buyer to pay you prior to closing. Make sure this agreement is in writing with very clear terms and conditions. We will discuss how you get paid and when in more detail later in this module. There are both advantages and disadvantages to assigning contracts. Some of the advantages of assignments are: no property closing. You are not actually closing on the property yourself when you assign it, so you can save yourself closing costs, and you never appear on title or public records as having owned the property. No loan needed. You do not need to get a loan or have the cash to purchase the property. In fact, you do not need to have impeccable credit or even be able to qualify for a loan. Smooth process. If your seller and your buyer cooperate, it can be a very smooth transaction. Cash now. You get your cash out immediately rather than later. For many people, the certainty of getting a paycheck right away is highly appealing. Market not relevant. The better you structure the deal and negotiate the purchase price, the faster you can assign the contact for a fee, no matter what is going on in your local real estate market. So, you do not have to worry about days on market, vacancy rates, or any other issues related to market changes. These are issues the investor buyer has to worry about, not you. Avoid seasoning requirements. It helps you get around some lenders' seasoning requirements on the seller's ownership. For instance, if an investor has not owned the property for at least 6 months, a lender may assume that the deal is fishy and might refuse to fund the buyer's loan. This can be a problem if the investor bought a property cheap and are reselling it quickly for a profit. This should not be confused with a legal issue, it is simply an underwriting guideline for some lenders. Of course, guidelines are just that. By going up the chain of command, you can generally get approval from loan underwriting by showing the property is being resold for a higher price because either it was purchased in a distressed situation, example, foreclosure, or that substantial repairs were made. Keep good records of your repairs so you can show the lender what was done and for how much. FHA loans. FHA loans require that the seller has owned the property for a certain period of time, usually 90 days, before they sell it, or else the buyer cannot qualify for a FHA loan to buy the property. However, if there is an assignment of contract done, there is no transfer of title, so the buyer could still qualify for an FHA loan even though they are not buying the right to buy the property directly from the original seller. The main issue is that if an investor wants to buy and quickly sell a property to an owner-occupant who needs to use FHA financing, they cannot do it quickly unless they do an assignment of contract or bird dog. Some of the challenges of assignments are: your profit is visible. If you are paid at closing, the buyer and seller will both know how much you made assigning the deal. For some people, this can be an issue, especially if the amount you are making as the assignment fee is considered large. Of course, you can try to work with your title company to have separate HUD statements. But generally, it is always best to be straightforward with both parties on what you are making so that you can assure them that you are not taking advantage of the situation. Remember, most of your end buyers will be other investors who want to fix the property up and resell it, and if they see that you take advantage on a regular basis, they may be less likely to work with you in the future. It is a small world, so take your fair share, but make sure it's fair. Non-assignability clauses. The HUD and banks have started incorporating non-assignability clauses into their boilerplate contracts for their short sale and REO properties. As more and more banks were burned by assignees who bought positions in their sales contracts but did not perform, banks decided it was time to start to control the selling process and force the original buyer on a contract to purchase the property. There are a few ways around this, but know that you cannot do a conventional assignment of contract on these properties. Keep in mind, this is only with banks and not necessarily with FSBOs, unless they have a savvy real estate agent or attorney. These options are discussed in more detail later in this module. Possibility of being cut out of the deal. A word of caution: if you deal with an end buyer whose character is questionable, they can try to cut you out of the picture and deal directly with the seller, purposely stringing you along until your contract expires. If you have questions your end buyer's integrity, have them sign a non-circumvent agreement or confidentiality statement. These protect the ideas and opportunities under a business deal and require that each party shall use the other party's information only for the purpose of pursuing a business relationship. Consult a reputable real estate attorney for other ways that you might protect your interest in the deal. Closing agent can question legality. Depending on how you structure the deal, the closing agent may deem the transaction illegal or not understand how to complete the transaction. Ask around and make sure you have a few investor-friendly closing agents on your power team who know how to do these types of deals. Agents can portray deal in negative light. Real estate agents who are not investor-friendly may present your offer with an assignment clause in it to the seller in a negative light simply because they do not understand the process and how it can benefit them and their seller. Buyers may not comply. If your end buyers are not fully committed to execute the deal, they may not perform within certain time frames, which cost you money, such as extra closing costs, and jeopardize your earnest money. Hopefully, you will remember to ask them to front the earnest money that you will place in an escrow account for the deal. Entering and exiting deals using assignments. You can use assignment of contracts as a way to enter or exit a real estate investment deal. Entering a deal. If you are going to use an assignment of contract to enter your deals, you need to buy the property far enough below fair market value that you can secure a nice assignment fee for your work and offer enough profit in the deal to attract an investor who will repair and sell the home. If you do not offer enough cushion in the deal you negotiate and get under contract, you run the risk of minimizing your fee as well as limiting the investors who will be interested in the deal. If you can negotiate a purchase price of 50 to 65 cents, after repair value, on the dollar, you should have enough room to make the deal attractive to you and an investor. What your investors are looking for. Another item to consider is what your investors are looking for in a property, so you should determine what they want in an investment and contract prior to placing these properties under contract. For instance, they may be particular about the types of clauses or time frames in the contract as well as the property characteristics or amount of repairs or certain types of repairs needed. Buy assignments of contract from other investors. Do you see how at one point you will be able to buy assignments of contract from other investors? You may have enough money to do it now, or you might have to do contract assignments for others for a bit until you have the capital and/or ability to secure financing, so you can execute on the contract assignment at closing time. If you do have the cash and/or the ability to acquire financing, look for people who have contract assignments that you can buy from them. It will save you time and effort going out and finding the deals and then negotiating the deals. That alone might make the assignment fee a worthwhile investment. One more mind-blowing concept is that you can buy an option agreement and a promissory note using an assignment of contract. This does not only apply to purchase and sales agreements, which will be discussed in more detail in another lesson in the financing course. In an assignment of contract, you need a motivated property owner to sign a contract that states that they are going to sell the house to you for, say, $70,000. Then, you work out a deal with your investor buyer saying that you are selling the house to them for $80,000. You exit the deal by having them cut you a check for $10,000 and you step aside. Your buyer now fills your place and pays the motivated property owner you were working with $70,000 for his or her property. Basically, instead of buying the house from you, he's buying a contract or right to buy from you and still pays his agreed price of $80,000 for that property. Contingency clauses. If your buyer bails on you, you should have contingency clauses in place in your original purchase agreement with the property owner, so you can get out of the contract without violating the contract and leaving yourself exposed and subject to a lawsuit. You should include protective clauses in the contract between you and the buyer as well, such as how the earnest money will be used and what happens if they can't execute the deal. Make sure that your contracts coincide and make sense, or else you might be obligated to take money out of your pocket to rectify the deal. You can more quickly and easily enter and exit your deals when you have a seller's list and buyer's list in place. The more pre-screened leads you have in these two areas, the more profit potential you have too. Getting money from the deal. So, how do you get your money from the deal? Some lenders will question why certain fees are being paid out on the HUD-1, because depending on how you structure the deal, the title company could pay you as a lien holder where you could receive an assignment fee at closing, thus it would be listed as a line item on the HUD-1 statement. The interesting thing is that the property owner can pay out their proceeds to anyone they choose. It has nothing to do with the buyer or their lender. In fact, it isn't a document required by lending, because it is the seller issuing instructions for their money's dispersal at closing. If the seller wants $20,000 to go to his grandmother, he can have an escrow demand payable through escrow to her. However, it can depend on the buyer's lender as to whether they question it or not. Lenders may turn a deal down and not release the funds because of the seller paying a third party. They want to know why the third party is being paid. They may also have an issue with how much the third party is being paid. Again, it depends on the lender. In most cases, you should find that the lenders will release funds even if there is a seller's escrow demand for a third party to be paid with no questions asked. Profiles. Please note the following profiles for sellers, buyers, and properties that are most ideal candidates for assigning contracts. Seller profile. You want owners who are motivated to sell, job loss, illness, downsizing, divorce, death, pay cuts, and people who have been transferred and can't sell but also can't afford to make 2 mortgage payments. You can also target tired landlords, out-of-town owners, and estates executors who may have equity in their properties. Searching only for pre-foreclosures or foreclosures can limit your business and sometimes prevent you from executing an assignment of contract due to the lender's non-assignability clause, so don't limit your thinking. Ideally, it is best for you if your seller has some equity in their home so they can go down enough in price to make it worth your time. Property profile. The property profile is the same one identified in the Real Estate Basics courses. When you first start investing in real estate, focus on single-family detached homes. These homes are almost always in demand and are easier to sell and rent. Specifically, we recommend dwellings with at least 3 bedrooms and 1 or more baths in the low to median price range for that area and located in a desirable area. It's okay if they require some repairs. If you do come across some townhomes, condos, or mobile homes that could be profitable, we recommend pursuing them, but use caution as they are not as desirable as a detached single-family residence is for most people, especially investors. You may be tempted to consider using assignments to profit from executive homes, land, and office condos, etc., but we do not recommend starting here. Invest in these properties only after you have more experience. Buyer profile. Your buyers can be owner-occupants who have cash, don't mind doing repairs, and want to buy a great property for a great price. However, in most cases, you should focus your attention on other investors, aka wholesalers or rehabbers, who want to buy fixer-uppers. Finding buyers and motivated sellers. Before you can begin assigning contracts, you need to motivated sellers as well as buyer investors. You can find motivated sellers in a variety of ways. Advertising. There are many ways to advertise what you do. Run ads in the paper that state, "I buy houses cash," place business card size ads in school newsletters, call local churches and charities to let them know that you are a real estate investor who helps folks that are behind on mortgage payments, place "I buy houses" signs on street corners, or hats and t-shirts stating what you do. Call homeowners listed in the public records who have filed for divorce, bankruptcy, or foreclosure, landlords who have recently evicted tenants, folks who have not paid real estate taxes, and people going through probate. Place magnetic signs on your car, go door knocking. Once people respond to your ads, you have options for contacting them. Visiting in person. Some people prefer calling or going up to a person's door. However, some people in foreclosure may not feel comfortable talking about their financial mishap with complete strangers, or they may be in denial of what is happening. With that said, usually 2 weeks before their public auction date, they finally throw in the towel and decide to sell their property. Letters. Another option is to send a letter. A letter that is addressed to a motivated seller and personally signed by you not only looks more professional but is a softer way of letting them know your intentions. Let this person know from the get-go that you are an investor and you are trying to make a profit. However, you want to also help them get out of their situation or possibly keep a foreclosure off her credit report. Send your letter first, and then send follow-up letters every 2 to 3 weeks. Local realtors. Local realtors are another viable option for finding motivated sellers. Tell them that you can close in a week and that you bring cash, so there's no need to qualify. If you give them the types of properties and deals you are seeking, they should bring you leads they have found on the MLS that meet your needs. Friends. And finally, friends and their friends can offer great seller leads too. If you tell others what you do, they may tell others. Let everyone you know that you are buying and can get any reasonable deal done. Finding sellers via their advertising efforts. Many sellers are looking for buyers already. Homes that have the "For Sale by Owner" sign in the yards are a place to start. And of course, local websites or newspapers where you can find more properties listed for sale are good places to look as well. Real-life example. Jean had found a great way to get leads for property owners who were in pre-foreclosure. She tried a few ways to market to these property owners and found a great way that brought her a lot of pre-screened leads. In the meantime, she worked on building her wholesale buyers list. She networked all of the time and found at least 10 great seasoned investors who were interested in buying properties in her area that were in pre-foreclosure. Joe was one investor she really liked to work with because he valued the work she put in and paid her well for the work she did. Joe had been in the business for well over 15 years. He had a network of different investors who found deals and then assigned them to him. He did not mind paying a few for these leads, because it let him more time to focus on renting or selling these properties in the end. Jean had one particular property transaction to note. She found a 3-bedroom, 2-bath home in Prescott, Arizona, in a great neighborhood. The current occupant was going through a bitter divorce as well as a court battle with her next-door neighbor. Essentially, she did not care if the property went into foreclosure, because she would be done with the neighbor and it would only ruin her soon-to-be ex-husband's credit, not hers. She told Jean she was moving out that weekend. She gave Jean the most recent phone number she had for her ex. Jean called him and he was more than happy to talk with Jean. He stated that he could not afford a mortgage on that home and rent on his new place. He would not be able to make the next month's payment as well as any others after that. Jean contracted with him to sell the property for what he owed $100,000. The current comparable showed that the property could easily sell for $140,000 not fixed up and $155,000 fixed up. Jean prepared a report showing the repairs, comps, and details about the area and sent it out to a few investors on her list. Joe was the first to respond. Joe and Jean signed a non-circumvent agreement that protected Jean from Joe going around her. Finding buyers. They also signed an assignment of contract agreement that Jean submitted to the closing agent handling the closing. At the closing, Jean was released a check for $2,000 for her work. They have worked a few more times after that, and Joe has paid her well for each transaction based on how much work Jean has done to get the property under contract. In some cases, it is less as well as a lot more than her first $2,000. Local real estate investment clubs. One of the first ways is to find the local real estate investment clubs in your town, because these can be great places where you can meet real estate investors, mortgage brokers, real estate agents, and others at their monthly meetings. You can look on social media websites to find your town's real estate investment clubs. Bring your business cards or flyers when you attend and start making contacts. Attend foreclosure auctions. You can try attending foreclosure auctions and introducing yourself while handing out business card. Search newspaper ads. You can also look in the newspaper to find ads placed by property buyers. Run ads in real estate section. You can place your own ads in the real estate section of the paper. Use keywords like handy, investor special, needs work, TLC, distressed, and must sell. You may even get hundreds of calls. Be sure to get the name and number of each caller so that you can add them to your fast cash buyers list so you can call them with your next house as well. If the house you have to sell is a good deal with plenty of equity, one of these buyers will want it. The mechanics of assigning contracts. Ultimately, once you find a rehabber, simply assign the sales contract to him or her, and this person will close on the transaction in your place. You'll get paid an assignment fee for putting the deal together, and the closing will take place at a title company or an attorney's office. The rehabber can arrange the entire closing. The rehabber or wholesale investor can arrange the entire closing. You may choose to receive your check prior to closing, or you can show up at closing and collect your check. Contract assignment details. Here's a bit more depth so you understand the main mechanics of the deal and how to structure it. 1. Find a motivated seller and a desirable property. 2. Contact the owner and get information about the property like how many bedrooms, bathrooms, garages, square footage of the property, age of the property. Is there a mortgage on the property? If so, what is the balance? Are there any liens on the property? How long have you owned the property? Are you living there currently? How long has it been listed for sale? 3. If the property is still owned by the homeowner and the property meets your investment criteria, which might be the same as your end buyers, then start the negotiation process. 4. Ask the seller what's the least they will take, in order to know the seller's possible price. If you know what your wholesale investor can pay, agree to a price with the property sold as is and close quickly. For example, say that number comes back $50,000. If your offer would have been more than that, say $60,000 with a built-in $5,000 assignment, your assignment is now $10,000. You should have a minimum, but never a maximum. Your minimum assignment fee could be as little as $500. It is personal preference based on what you feel your work and effort is worth. Remember, your wholesale buyer should feel that your assignment fee is fair, or else they may not work with you in the future. 5. Try to get an offer accepted on the property, which should be 50% below the after-repaired value of the property. 6. If you and the property seller can agree, sign a contract using a purchase and sales agreement appropriate for the area. For example, your offer may look like this. Asking price, $100,000, after repaired value, $175,000. Your offer, $100,000. Initial down payment earnest money payment, $100 is all you pay out. 7. Include a financing contingency clause that states you can get out of the deal if you cannot secure suitable financing. It may say something like, "This contract is subject to inspection and approval of the property by buyer's partner," or, "This contract is contingent upon buyer's contractor verifying rehab costs," or, "This offer is subject to review, inspection and written approval of my financial partner within 14 days of seller's acceptance of this contract." If buyer does not give written approval, this offer is withdrawn and any earnest money shall be returned within 3 business days. Designate enough time to acquire financing or get your partner's approval, or else you can cancel the contract. Your partner can be whoever you want it to be, your pet, friend, or brother. If you can't find a buyer, send a letter by certified mail well before the specified contract timeframe is up stating that your partner didn't approve of the property or that you did not find suitable financing. If you crafted the contract correctly, your purchase and sale agreement will become null and void and your deposit will be returned. 8. In your purchase and sales agreement, secure a 30 to 60 day timeframe to close. This gives your wholesale buyer enough time to do their due diligence and close on time. 9. Be sure to place the words and/or assigns after your name on the contract or use an assignable contract. Either way, the contract must be assignable in some way, or you cannot do this type of deal. 10. Give a small deposit. It depends on the area what amount is reasonable, ideally the smaller the better, to secure the property. 11. Have a list of pre-screened buyers who you can get this deal out in front of immediately. 12. It would help your investors to have some financial, local demographic, rental and property-specific information about the property available for them to review when you present the deal to them. If you have this readily available, you will make your job a lot easier and get more qualified leads, as this is kind of a screening process of its own. 13. Make copies of the property financial statement or other aspects of it, and the listing sheet, repair estimates, and any good pictures you might have taken of the property. Staple them together and bring them to the local real estate investors club's meetings. 14. Assign the purchase contract to one of the buyers on your buyers list. 15. Get them to commit to a purchase price and to close on the deal with you. Try to get about 4% to 5% of the asking price. Those are rule of thumb amounts to try to ask for an assignment fee. You might have a clause in the assignment of contract agreement that states if the property does not close due to no fault of theirs, example, clouded title, no title insurance, they will receive their funds back. 16. You when they sign an assignment of contract and possibly a non-circumvent agreement. You assign the purchase and sales agreement over to them. 17. Another alternative would be to do an assignment of contract document that gives the assignee all rights and responsibilities in the contract, and then an assignment fee agreement that articulates how much and when you will be paid for the assignment. 18. You will want to collect the full deposit amount that you put down on the property. We recommend keeping it separate from your assignment fee if you are going to receive that up front. If it is included and collected at one time and the deal falls apart, you might lose your right to some money for your time and effort. Ultimately, it depends on what is written in your contract as to what you have to return and what you can keep. 19. The buyer will need a closing agent to close the deal. Find an investor-friendly closing agent and you will find no resistance. Find a non-investor-friendly closing agent and they will probably tell you it's illegal. You are paid by the buyer prior to closing or the assignment fee is on the HUD-1 as an expense to the buyer. 20. In the latter case, you are paid your assignment fee at the closing table. The closing agent writes you a check for whatever the fee is or you are paid by the buyer prior to closing. 21. If it is a week before closing and you still don't have a buyer, you should opt out of the deal then and not at the day of closing. 22. If for some reason you cannot sell a contract, then your deposit money goes back to you from the owner, or you can let the owner keep it. The contract will then be worthless, and the property goes back up for sale by the seller. 23. You might consider attempting to buy the house if you need to. Developing some relationships with hard money lenders can suffice for this. Making real estate contracts assignable. Under common law, nearly all contracts are assignable unless the contract specifically prohibits an assignment. Most real estate contracts either have some restriction on assigning or have checkboxes to indicate assignable or not assignable. If you want to assign the contract, you need to make sure that the contract does not prohibit an assignment, or cross out an initial and reference the addendum in that section if it does, and state that it is assignable in the addendum. If the contract does not specify that it is assignable, you might want to write after your name and/or assigns. The addendum must say buyer reserves the right to assign this contract, so you have the right to sell the contract to anyone you want. Present. The assignment must occur in the present. A promise to assign in the future has no legal effect. Lack of agreement prohibiting assignment. Of course, a contract may contain a non-assignment clause. However, this may not necessarily destroy the power of either party to make an assignment. Instead, it merely allows the other party to sue for breach of contract if such an assignment is made. Assignment of a contract containing such a clause will be ineffective if the assignee knows of the non-assignment clause, or if the non-assignment clause specifies that all assignments are void. Items you can assign. Believe it or not, you can do an assignment on a lot of different things. However, an assignment must be in writing if it assigns wages, any interest in real property, collateral for a loan, or debt. Preventing an assignment. You can prevent an assignment by including any of the following. Non-assignment clause in the contract. Rescission clause. This gives the other party the power to rescind the contract if an assignment is made. Clause creating a condition subsequent. This rescinds the contract automatically. Legal issues. It is not always clear how the state authorities might view your practices. Therefore, this discussion is limited to the simple activity of buying and flipping as follows. 1. Sign a contract with a seller, assign it to a third party. 2. Sign a contract with a seller, sign another one with a third party, then double close. States that limit real estate activity. A few states limit the real estate activity of any persons, even if you are acting on your own behalf. South Dakota, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Maryland all have limitations on the number and frequency of real estate transactions you can do before you will need a real estate license. For example, Michigan law limits you to 4 transactions per year, although it is not clear whether using multiple corporate entities will be a workaround. Most don't prosecute. There's few, if any, reported cases of people being prosecuted anywhere in the country for not having a real estate license. The issue of licensing is more relevant in the enforcement of your profit. For example, if you assign your contract prior to closing and expect the buyer to pay you at closing, he may stiff you and argue that you don't have a license. Don't act like a broker. The bottom line is that if you don't act like a real estate broker, the state agencies that license brokers will leave you alone. If you use the licensing exemptions to skirt the licensing laws, you will likely hear from the state licensing agencies. It is important that you make it very clear to all parties in the transaction that you are not a broker and that you are acting on your own behalf. Overcoming non-assignability. Smart listing agents will not allow a contract to be assignable because if they do, the original buyer might just disappear and a new buyer show up in their place, and then not close. You might be surprised at how often this happens in the junker and foreclosure property market. Bank REO departments have gotten so used to it that they have attorneys write up 2 to 3 paragraphs into their addendum specifically requiring non-assignability. Even so, there are ways to get around this. Please note, This is not legal advice, but merely a few options to deal with restricted assignability. Consult with a real estate attorney to determine your options. A few ways to deal with non-assignability are: 1. To take title in the name of an entity, like a corporation, LLC, partnership, land trust, etc., as opposed to an individual, and then sell the interest in the entity. Or 2. To close on the property. It has to be a real closing with real money changing hands, and then shortly or even immediately thereafter have a second closing with the end buyer, aka double closing. Or 3. Sign an option contract and have a double closing. Taking title in the name of an entity. The first option listed for overcoming non-assignability is to take title in the name of an entity. Here are some of the steps and features of that process. Deeding to an LLC. In order to avoid paying the substantial transfer taxes which result from the sale of large, multi-million-dollar commercial projects, buyers frequently request that sellers deed their property into an LLC, limited liability company, and then purchase the LLC. You may decide that if this works for commercial real estate buyers, it can work for your buyers. In your case, when you purchase your properties within an LLC, you can sell your LLC to your buyer instead of assigning your contract to them. As far as the sellers are concerned, the buyer, the LLC, on their contract remains the same. For example, you submit an offer to purchase a property at 123 Hampton Road, making your offer in the name of 123 Hampton, LLC. Then you would talk to your wholesale buyers about this property, offering to sell them 123 Hampton, LLC, as opposed to selling them the property. Their incentive to buy the LLC was the reduced purchase price that you can offer, since you both would save money on closing costs by avoiding a double closing. In example, one closing from the bank to 123 Hampton, LLC, and another from 123 Hampton, LLC to your buyer. If your buyer agrees to purchase the LLC, which in turn owned the contract to purchase the home, they would then arrive at settlement and sign as owner of 123 Hampton, LLC. Collecting an assignment fee. In terms of compensation, you sell an LLC to your buyer for whatever your assignment fee would be, which you can collect in several different ways. If your buyer was paying cash, sometimes they could just cut you a check for your assignment fee. Then you would hand them the LLC documents, sign everything over to them, and your deal would be done. In the event the bank seller could not produce clear title, you would need to return the assignment fee to your buyer. When buyers don't pay the assignment fee. Sometimes your cash buyers may not pay you the assignment fee until closing. In this case, you need to direct them to use your title company and would not produce the original LLC documents until we were at closing and you were assured that you were going to get your check. Using a private lender. On some occasions, your buyer may need to borrow money for the purchase. In these instances, you should direct them to a private lender who is familiar with your routine. For example, your purchase price with the bank might have been $30,000, but your buyer requested a $33,000 loan to cover the $3,000 assignment fee he agreed to pay you. From the $33,000 loan proceeds, $3,000 would remain after settlement, which the title company would give to your buyer in the form of a check to the LLC. Your buyer will then endorse the check over to you at the settlement table. Recap: taking title in the name of an entity. To recap, here are the steps in the process. 1. Make offer in the name of an LLC. Include the property address in the name of the LLC. 2. Once offer is accepted, create the LLC. Check with an attorney and/or your Department of State regarding the procedures and costs for forming an LLC. 3. Sell your membership in the LLC to a buyer once you receive your assignment fee. Check with an attorney regarding the documents required to sell an LLC. 4. Collect your assignment fee in the form of cash or a check made out to the LLC and endorsed over to you by your buyer, the new owner of the LLC. Double closing, simultaneous closing. The next option mentioned for overcoming non-assignability is the double, or simultaneous, closing. The simultaneous close basically involves you purchasing a property with an investor's money and immediately selling that property to the investor for a profit. It's a nifty little deal that works well when you pay close attention to the percentage of returns on each sale. Many new real estate investors can run into problems when they attempt a simultaneous close on a property. For instance, many title companies have initiated a blanket policy that prevents these kinds of closings. Advantages to double closing. Typically, the more markup involved in the assignment, the more preferable a second, or double, closing is. The seller and end buyer may not grumble much when they see you making $6,000 or $7,000 in profit, but they might get very upset and even refuse to close or try to go around you if they see you making a $20,000 or $50,000 profit. This can happen, and renegotiating at the last minute is no fun. The double closing helps you avoid this situation. No license needed. The other great thing about double closings is that to wholesale you do not need a real estate license in most states. You do, however, need to be a principal in the transaction. This means that you are signing your name as a buyer on the contract. Principals are exempt from most license laws. However, paying referral fees, consulting fees, bird dog fees, etc., to unlicensed people who are not principals to a transaction is generally a criminal license law violation. As always, this guide does not replace the legal counsel you can get from an attorney, so please retain your own legal counsel. Reverse assignment. If you do get into a last-minute jam in a double closing situation, there is a solution, which is called a reverse assignment. You simply assign your contract with the end buyer back to the owner and step out of the deal. Your consideration for doing so is the profit you would have otherwise made. This consideration can be documented in writing and secured by a lien on the owner's property to be paid to you at closing. For example, Conrad did not have good credit and only $2,000 that he could use to get into real estate investing. He was very good at networking, however. Within a few weeks, he had a good list of people who might be interested in buying wholesale properties. He was smart because he focused on finding his fast cash buyers before he even started making offers. Why was he smart? Well, he now knew exactly what his buyers want and where they wanted to buy. He could now start looking for properties in these areas and negotiating deals that matched these buyers' needs. Probate properties seemed to be his niche, as he had a few relatives that were in the estate planning, mortuary, and estate auction business. They were able to refer people who had properties and circumstances that they knew he might be interested in pursuing further. With $2,000 to work with to start, he placed a $1,000 earnest money as consideration for each contract he solidified. One of the properties he got under contract with the $1,000 earnest, purchase price of $75,000 and resale value of $115,000. The people who put it under contract with him were out-of-state owners who had inherited the property from their recently passed uncle. The property needed about $15,000 in repairs. Conrad assigned the contract to Ken, a licensed contractor, who reimbursed him for the $1,000 earnest money and paid Conrad $3,500 for right to buy the property. Ken planned on fixing up the property and reselling it for $110,000. Conrad brought a few more properties like this one to Ken, but after a while he had enough cash to buy the homes on his own. At that point, he worked with Ken and his rehab crew to fix up his properties, so Conrad could sell them for top dollar. Action items. Review this module to determine if assignments of contract are feasible for you. Review the seller's list, networking list, and fast cash buyers list lessons, and then market, acquire, and maintain a list of sellers and buyers for your contract assignments. Evaluate your 4 target areas and determine if assigning contracts is feasible. If none of your areas are feasible, do more research to find new target area that are. From your buyers list, identify the property criteria of the buyers. From your sellers list, identify at least 10 motivated sellers who are distressed and will do a contract assignment with you. Narrow your list down to at least 5 potential deals and do a property evaluation on each. Evaluate, calculate, and present at least 2 to 4 offers a week that are suitable for an assignment of contract. Summary. In this course, we have provided enough information for you to understand the basics of assigning contracts so you can step outside of your comfort zone and make money. The knowledge is here for you to change your life and secure a new financially sound future for yourself. Just to recap, we have discussed what an assignment of contract is, what the advantages and challenges are for you and the buyer, when you can use it, and what characteristics you are looking for in your seller, properties, and buyers. If you are not quite sure about finding, evaluating, or presenting offers on properties, please review the Real Estate Basics module. Coming up. From here you can move on to other lessons that will discuss how to use other financing techniques, how to use other fast cash investment strategies, how to find fast cash buyers and develop a list of them to constantly pull from for your deals, how to develop a list of sellers to constantly approach and look to secure assignment of contract deals with, as well as many examples of each of these techniques. The fast cash investment lessons in the Financing and Real Estate Alternatives courses you should review are Being a Bird Dog, Buy Fix and Sell, and Buying Subject to an Options. Also, the marketing course will help you understand how to market to sellers and fast cash buyers, and how to add people to your network.